What's up, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in this video I will analyze the one single game that Clem lost in a standard TVZ in mid to late game within the last 1.5 months or so. He has only lost a single game against the Zerg playing normal against him. Every single loss, by the way, within the last one or 2 months are coming from Reynor, every single map loss, ever since EWC. And most of those have been Reynor playing off-meta builds. He has done Muda Ling all-ins twice. He's beaten him with Ling Queen drops twice. And he's beaten him with a proxy edge once. And he has even beaten him in a normal macro game in WTL with Ling Bane Muda. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is why don't more Zerg players play Ling Bane Muda, and why does it seem to work decently against Clem. I also tried to play Ling Bane Muda against him in WTL. How come we don't usually see this, but against Clem, a lot of Zerg players are doing it? Well, that has to do with a couple of things. One of the big weaknesses of the Muda is marine tank timings. Committed marine tank timings you just simply cannot hold with Muda. So 2 base all-ins, 3 base all-ins, even committed 5 Rex pressures, so they can open with a very normal 3cc opener, and then get 5 barracks quickly, push with the first couple of tanks, 2 or 3 tanks. They bring forward the Hellions, morph them into Hellbats. It is extremely difficult to hold those timings, even if they're not super committed, with Mudas. Usually what we have to do is skip upgrades forever, then we have to skip drones, and then if the turn doesn't actually commit, you're dead. So with Mudas, very often you find yourself gambling. Not just that certain build orders don't happen, but also that they don't play a certain way. And then when they play a certain way, you kind of have to guess how the exact execution of the Terran side looks before you can know for certain. So Muda is more of a gamble unit, but if you actually get all the Mudas out and you get an economy and decent upgrades running, which is a very hard thing to do to begin with, then Mudas become really good, because with Mudas you can trade cost effective or at least even against a Terran most of the time, since Mudas are so quick and they don't have to abide by the rules that the maps give you. You can attack from everywhere, they force defensive turrets, they force Terrans to leave way more units at home. Let's say in a normal game, where as we see Clem's trying to hold this third base, he already lost an SCV, a Reaper, the third base still went down. So this opener went pretty decently for Reynor, I would say, overall. I'm gonna talk about that a little later, but whereas in a normal game, let's say he has 2 benches here, a tank on the high ground, and then he rallies all of his units here, it's very difficult to deal damage with run-bys. Terran doesn't need to leave that many units at home, but if you have even just a handful of Mudas, let's say 12 Mudas or so, which is more than a handful, it's a dozen. Even if you just have a certain amount of Mudas, the counterattacks become just that much more potent. Because the Mudas could clear the tank in the main, they could clear the Banshees. And yeah, they're very quick, so they can enter their base, the Terran base, from anywhere. So Ling Bane Muda is a very good composition if you get to a max out stage, if you get the good economy up, if you get good upgrades up. The only issue is that the Mudas, in order to get out of the Mudas, you need 6 gas early, then you need even more gas. The Sparry costs 200 to 100, and then every single Muda costs 100, so it's a lot of gas. You already are mining less minerals, so you have less Ling Bane, then all of the gas and extra minerals as well go into Muda, so you have way fewer Lings and Banes than you usually would have. So defending any sort of tank timing is very difficult. It's not so much the Widowmine and the Thor, which I very often see pointed out. That is the bane of the Muda. It's more so the tank timings and the early game. Early game is very hard with Muda. If you lose any workers, very frequently the game just ends. Against the first, even tiny tank push doesn't need to be committed. So this game we see the Clem bread and butter, the 3cc Banshee. Now this was with the 8 Hellions because he went for a double Reaper to try and contain the third base. So the initial start was good for Reynor already. This is game 4 of EWC. At this point the score is 2-1 in favor of Clem. The one game that Reynor won beforehand was with a 2 base Ling Queen all-in. And this is a game where he plays very, very standard. And this is also the only game where Clem lost in a very standard game, because this was actually Ling Bane into Hydras and Lurkers. So pretty much the most standard unit composition, I would say. Ling Bane Hydra Viper is what most Zergs are going for. Even pure Ling Bane is more common than Muda play, to say at the very least. So Reynor goes for a quick 4th base right here. He defends the Hellions. quite well. He doesn't lose any drones, but this is common for Clem's early games. He very, very often doesn't kill anything. I have so many games where I have the perfect early game and then I still lose. Like, I couldn't even keep count of it. But this is not just for me, because Clem is simply quicker than me. It's very difficult for me to win against him over time. The longer the game goes, the harder it becomes, because he just is better at looking at the screen, processing the information and microing the units accordingly, either picking them up or always taking good trades over time. So for him, for me, beating him is very difficult, but not even the other Zergs, not even Cyril and Reynor are beating him right now in standard game. So that's why I wanted to take a look at this one in particular, because this one stands out to me. It is the one game where he did end up losing, and even though the early game was very good for Reynor, as you can see by the resources lost, 3cc Highland Banshee always gets you into an okay position, even if you kill nothing. And Clem very, very often doesn't kill anything. So we're gonna skip through here a little bit. Kills a couple of workers. Reynor just drones up, which is 100% fine to do. Saves his queen over here. He went straight to 80 drones. Whenever Clem plays this, I also go to 88 drones, and you're still okay, because this has a very late follow-up. Now this game, Clem didn't go for his normal safety tank, so Clem's even playing it a little bit more greedily, going straight into Widow Mines. Here comes the first move out. He scans, he confirms that there is an infestation pit. He doesn't know if this is going to be Hydras into Lurkers or if this is just straight up Ultras. But he doesn't care too much. Reynor went straight to the 88 drones that I was alluding to, going into 8 gases as well. And this is where Clem's multitasking starts. This is where Clem gets ahead. If it's not now, if it's not with the next drop, it might be with the one after, or the one after, or the one after. Or the attack after that one. And yeah. You get where I'm going with this. It's just over time that he trades well, and already he has traded more cost effectively than his opponent. He scans, he always snipes a couple of banelings, then he backs. Now he sent all of his reinforcements towards the next base. He still has one Banshee alive. This one is spotting for run-bys. Very important. Very often he has a Widow Mine here, a Banshee here, a Widow Mine here. So all of this is spotting for run-bys. So then the only other place you could run-by on is where his main army is going. He has very, very good army movement. It's not easy to find run-bys against him, because he splits up his units. Apologies. In order to also spot the run-bys, and he's also very active, so he tries to drop everywhere. Resource lost is going more and more towards his favor. The one thing that Reynor did this game is he rushed out the Lurkers pretty fast, which should put an end to straight up attacks. It doesn't put an end to the constant trading though, because you have to fight for map control. You can't just make Lurkers and put them here, or here, or here, or here, because you need to save all of your creep spread. If you lose all of your creep spread, eventually it's going to be impossible for you to keep expanding, to keep the pressure up on the Terran and taking these bases, which usually either you have to mine this base or this base in order to win a late game against Terran, or straight up kill him, which is also very difficult if you don't have creep spread. Becomes impossible, so defending the creep spread is muy importante. As we see, Reynor spotting up here, gets a Widow Mine. These are some good moves. He clears up the spotters for Clem while he's on point with defending the 2 medevacs right here, the 2 Lurker Dens. A little bit out of position. I do not like 2 Lurker Dens. I think the Burrow upgrade is overrated from Reynor in particular. I don't think I've seen a single other Zerg go for double Lurker Dens, and I just straight up don't think it's worth it. Here he catches him a little bit off guard, and this is the first big move that Reynor is doing. He went behind the army with the Lurkers, as Clem was not paying attention, so Clem here now goes. We're going into his vision. He loses a couple of units, right, to the Lurkers. These are the maneuvers that Reynor has been trying to do already for a while here, trying to hide the Lurkers. At first they were here, then they went over here to flank, but Clem paid good attention. And he's still in an okay position, right? He gets up his extra CCs and he's gearing up for the late game. Now, once again, Reynor clears up the spotters. This is very important. If you have the APM to do it, try to clear up the spotters. If there's Banshees, I always, for example, on Alcyone, it's very common to have a Banshee in the top left-hand side. Try to clear it. It's super important. So now Clem was completely caught off guard, and this is the first very big win for Reynor. There's 5 Widow Mines here, 6 overall, on just this screen. And out of those, only this single Widow Mine hits, and it's not even that good of a hit. So Clem just lost most of his AoE damage. He's stimming back, trying to defend this, and the ghosts don't have cloak yet, so the ghosts die here as well. This was a fantastic fight for Reynor. It was a cost-efficient one. Clem is down to 150 supply, so he was basically just out of position. Let's try to analyze why this happened, because that's what I'm interested in, right? So we're looking at it from Clem's POV. This is where his drop dies at the bottom. This is where he goes back with most of his army. He unloads. The Banshee is still here to spot. The Banshee now dies. He knows most of the army is coming. He stims half of his units to deal with the Nydus. So the Nydus was the distraction. These units are out of position. And Clem was not quick enough to pre-split the mines and borrow them, so they all die. So it was as simple as him basically not responding in time perfectly. He knew most of the army was there, but maybe he thought this wasn't everything. And he tried to also cover for this space because he lost the spotter on this side. Since, if you remember from before, he used to have one of his armies, he always splits his armies, here to spot for Lingbane run-bys, and he needs to defend this location. If this planetary goes down, if this extra CC goes down to maybe 40 supply of Lingbane, it would be a bad situation for him. That's why he's stimming a lot of his army there. And now because he's splitting up this army, and because none of the Widow Mines are sieged, so that's obviously a mistake from Clem, especially considering that this was in sensor tower range, this was a huge win for Reynor. So this is the first very big win, I think, for the Italian Zerg, killing 16 workers. He split up his units over here as well, killing the entire mineral line of Clem's third base. So now he's up 20 workers. I have the wrong overlay, my apologies for that. So you can't see all the information. I will still always try to point it out. So random Widow Mine there also gets cleared up. One thing that has to be mentioned is that the moment you clear parts of how Clem is spotting the counterattacks, this is where you should strike. And before you strike, you need to make sure that you clear his vision. Because if you don't clear his vision, he's going to be in position and then the fights are going to be bad. The reason this was good was because he was out of position with most of his army, right? So now he comes here right before the planetary is done. This is also good. The Nyduses keep distracting Clem. It's also very important. Drops changelings to make it even harder for Clem. He would need to pay attention. Here comes the next Nydus at the same time. These Marines might get a cancel on the hatch, but that's still cost efficient, right? All of these Marines, basically they killed the cancel the hatch, which is 75 minutes, plus kill the drone, so killed maybe 150 minerals worth of units, and those Marines were definitely more pricey. But Clem, with this Marine poke, also scouted where most of Reynor's army was, so he knows how to position his units. It's a lot about army positioning, army movement, army rotations in this matchup. I think Reynor has all of his Lurkers in the Nydus. Yep, that's 8 Lurkers in the Nydus right there. And Reynor is now once again splitting his army. It's very important that Reynor has his Nydus out somewhere. I think he should have done this earlier. Put it like here or something. So the Lurkers are out somewhere and they're not completely useless. Obviously, if you have them just borrowed here, the girls will just snipe them for free. But if you keep them close to Nydus, you can always escape towards the Nydus, and then at least you don't have a lot of supply missing from your army, which is really bad. So Clem pokes here. The entire point of Clem's playstyle is he fights for map control and then he splits up his army, so he's never caught off guard because he always sees where his opponent's units are, and then he loads up the units. So he trades, kills a couple units, he loads up, and then he runs away. That's basically what it boils down to whenever he plays the Widow Mine playstyle. Okay, Reynor kills one here, and this is the first Nydus that actually goes up. Notice that he added a second Nydus worm, and that's why it went up. And this is the second massive win for Reynor. If we go back here, they're both maxed right now. Zerg is a little bit ahead in bank, which is common. Let's look at why this went up. I think he just didn't see it, right?
Command center upgrade complete.
So he's microing right here. He's gonna pick up the Widow Mine fires. We're trying to understand how you can force Clem to make a mistake. So he sees this is not the entire army, so he instantly resplits towards here. So he wastes an action there. He wastes attention towards that side. Then he sees the Nydus here. He also sees it at the natural, I'm pretty sure, but he is forced to micro here. So that poke was very important. I think if that poke doesn't happen, he can micro this cleanly and kill these two Nydus worms, both, in time. Just because he moved in here a little bit and he forced Clem to pay attention so he can EMP, that saved him there a lot. Also, the Widow Mines were not focus fired. Whenever Widow Mines don't focus fire, they never attack the same target. So they all split their fire, which means they didn't kill any of the Lurkers. And now that Clem thought he had dealt with this, together with the 3 Widow Mines, he's microing back here, so once again, forces attention somewhere else. He looks back here, all of his units are gone. He just lost 50 supply there. In an instant. So the first mistake was here, losing all of his AoE, losing easily 30 supply. Because he was out of position. The second mistake is coming here because he's not paying attention. He thought he had enough to kill all of this. He didn't expect so many Lurkers to come out. He simply misjudged the situation. This doesn't happen very often to Clem, but he did right here, and he loses all of this in an instant. Because he just didn't look at it. So yeah. Resources lost. This was a very good fight once again. The rest of the fights have not been going well, but it's always the unusual, the one-off engagements. The ones where you try to force a mistake from your opponent that are going in your favor. Escapes here with a couple of Lurkers and tries to find some army here at the same time. So Reynor trying to keep up with Clem's speed. Being the aggressor in StarCraft always makes you look faster than being the defensive player. So whenever Clem attacks, it's like, okay, Reynor is not quite microing perfectly here in this situation. Or he's not paying attention fully here, so Clem looks quicker. Then when Reynor attacks, Reynor looks quicker. Because you are the one that decides where the fight will happen. That's another good move. While he's occupying the army right here, with his Lynx and Hydras, once again, this is just poking, trying to force his attention somewhere else. Not actually wanting to kill any units here. Maybe just picking off a couple of units when Clem is not paying attention. But this is just using his extra APM to kill this. Then a Baning. This is the perfect army to kill this planetary. Yep, 4 Banings remain. He kills the planetary, and at the same time, he engages here. He thought this was good because Clem wasn't paying attention, but without Banings, you cannot kill ghosts with Medrex about them. He even lost all of his overseers to those snipes. But what is Clem not paying attention for? These Lurkers. Even Clem is mortal, he can't pay attention to everything at once. Now gets a couple of snipes on those Hydras. He realizes, okay, there's some Lurkers here. So, once again, another grade 1 to 3 punch from Reynor. Forces attention somewhere else. These Lurkers got some kills. Right, he tried to force attention here without actually wanting to engage. Then killing this planetary, even putting a Nydus, I think that's just feeling himself at that point. In case Clem doesn't respond, Nydus goes up, delays the hatchery by a lot because the creep starts spreading. At the same time, Reynor is not rich. Reynor is not expanding towards Clem's side of the map, but he's trying to make it chaotic. He's not trying to outmine his opponent. So there's one way where you can win. I analyzed the game between Cyril and Oliveira recently. I think it was Cyril versus Oliveira, where it was also on this map, and Cyril went in with a much more passive approach. He didn't try to tax Oliveira to kill him, but instead he tried to mine his bases and then force the Terran to do something. So he tried to take this base and this base, mine as much as possible from it, and then only attack and take engagements when the Terran is in the middle of nowhere. If the Terran has to move forward to either expand or attack. Whereas Reynor, instead of trying to take these bases early and stealing minerals from his opponent, which loses you resources, he tries to mine the maximum amount possible to gain momentum and try to eventually kill Clem. It's a different approach. Both are fine. A Zerg that doesn't take the Terran's bases right away is not always a mistake, because the moment he takes this hatchery and then he moves over the drones from a much safer location. So maybe this one is actually not that safe on Oceanborn. It would be something like this. You select all of these drones and you move them over here to mine from the space. This will slow down your mining, because all of these drones that usually would be mining are now not mining anymore until they arrive here. And the moment they arrive here, it's a much more exposed location. This base might die and you once again lose mining time. So instead of having maybe a 1.6k, 2.6k bank, you would have 0 minerals in the bank. So it's not always a mistake to not take the forward expansions, because it slows you down as well as Zerg. It is not free to do. It also, the hatchery costs money, and very often you lose those hatcheries. But yeah, it's just a different approach. So Reynor once again finds Clem out of position here. No Widow Mines. This doesn't tend to happen, but Reynor was very good at clearing Widow Mines whenever something big happened. So he got a nice little catch on Clem's army, and because of this single lurker, Clem is completely out of position. He went there with almost his entire army. Let's look at it from Clem's point of view again. Why was he caught out of guard? Off guard. So first, he was spending attention defending this Nydus. It's always the aggressive moves like the Nydus worms, the drops that force attention from your opponent, and you can spend attention then trying to catch your opponent sleeping a little bit. And then the one Nydus, the one lurker, Clem naturally moves his number 1 hotkey there, which means he has nothing now defending these 2 orbitals and all of these SCVs. Just that one Nydus with the lurker borrowed behind the 4th base, killing 9 workers here, getting one of the orbitals to burn, and now he's losing ghosts because I'm pretty sure he F2'd in that direction. Actually, Clem is sick, he still loaded them up. And this wasn't even that bad for him. Clem is very good at handling these situations as well. He's just very good in general against run-bys, against aggression, while being aggressive himself. So yeah, now here comes another move. Like these are the moves that you need to do. Nydus worms can catch your opponent off guard. Drops can catch your opponent off guard. Borrowed infestors, borrowed banelings, hold fire lurkers. Those are kind of the things that can surprise Clem. If you try to beat him straight up, it's going to be very difficult. You can try to go for massive run-bys or all-ins. He's usually good against both of those. But those are the game-winning plays. Reynor is not trying to play a game where over time he's going to win in 10 minutes from now. He wants to win pretty much now. He's expanding here because he needs to keep taking expansions. Loses this hatchery. Loses mining here, this Hydra survives, and he has the perfectly placed infestor for all of this. This hatchery is out of position, by the way. No turrets here, no scans here. This will be the reveal of Burrow and the infestors. The infestor comes in from behind, gets a huge funnel on a lot of ghosts, so a lot of ghosts die. Parasitic bomb combination. Clem boosts back. All of these medevacs are being hit by parasitic bomb. So Clem now splits his medevacs. 3 medevacs died to that parasitic bomb. A lot of other medevacs are low. A lot of ghosts have died because of the fungal. The Hydras are now going forward, killing all of the liberators that Clem had. And you can see that if this didn't happen, if this was a more normal fight, and they both end up with 180 supply, it probably favors Clem, right? It probably does favor Clem quite a bit, but because of that fungal, because Clem was caught off guard, it worked. So once again, let's try to ask ourselves the question, why was Clem caught off guard? Because it doesn't happen very often, right? So we gotta figure out if this is something that is a one-off, or if this is something that we might be able to force. You can always say you force mistakes in the end. You can try to make it more likely that your opponent is making mistakes. You never force them yourself, unless you're already winning and your opponent doesn't have enough units. So what is Clem doing right now? He's trying to macro. Okay, he has a lot of workers not mining, so he selects them. Now he's building turrets, probably for these infestors. He's still not paying attention. Now he realizes he didn't even look at his army. So yeah, he was just macroing, and he was just caught off guard. An extra reason why this was possible was because there was no forward sensor tower yet. No forward sensor tower, no forward turret. Why was this possible? Because of the earlier moves. Like, Clem wasn't as rich. He was slowed down. He couldn't take the space as early as he would have liked to. And in a game where the lurker is here, the attack here didn't happen, who knows? You know, maybe this move and the game is not over yet. But yeah, this was the actual game-winning play right here. A single flanking infestor, and those infestors are always the most scary when they are not revealed yet. So it was the very first infestor of the game. Now Clem needs to slow down, but he feels like he can still expand. There is no creep here, but he almost has no Widow Mines here left over. Goes forward, snipes a couple of Hydras, and ends up dying to the next infestor. Instantly quits the game. And this was the single game where someone just playing a normal macro game, standard, no muta, no all-ins, has beaten Clem since the beginning of EWC. And yeah, I think Reynor played very well. Let's take a look at the deciding factors once again. So you need a clean early game. He went to 88 drones pretty much straight up. I don't think he was insanely far ahead because of it. You need a clean early game. Then you need to split your army correctly in order to stay alive, right? This is decent micro, always having good splits against the Widow Mines. That's quite nice. Here he didn't pay attention perfectly. Lost a couple of workers. Here I'm pretty sure the Widow Mine splash killed a full medevac. All of these things in the end matter so much. If you have 10 supply more or less, it can change the outcome of the game drastically. Yeah, full medevac died here. So that was good. So his game plan was just to rush up Lurkers, defend with Link Bane at first, to have the maximum amount of actual fighting units. And then the moment things started to turn around was when Reynor stabilized and did stuff on the other side of the map. That's always how it goes. It's kind of a tug of war, where Terran is the attacking race at first, and then you have to play really well in order to survive, and then you're the attacking race that kind of has to kill the Terran before they get there, unless you're mining out Terran's bases. And then Terran, once again, has to be the one that is a little bit aggressive. They can still take their time, but they need to not let you mine 2 extra bases completely. I thought this was really cool too. Seeing that his army is not fully prepared, really good mine splits, and having the Lurkers behind. You just looked for game-winning maneuvers very frequently. This is what Dark, I think, is the best Zerg at in the world, is not his macro, not his micro, even though his micro is very, very good. It is that he's constantly searching for ways to win the game. He's looking for game-winning punches. He's not there perfectly jabbing the entire way through it. He doesn't have perfect footwork, but he waits for the perfect moment and then he throws a Hail Mary punch to try and win the game. And he does it multiple times in a game. And if any of them work, he can either get a lead from it and go from there, or just straight up win the game. He's very good at those maneuvers, those little tactics. So yeah, this is really where it changed. The first Nydus, when the first Nydus swarms got introduced, the double Nydus, because the initial Nyduses did not work. Or did he get them at the same time? I'm not even sure. But yeah, the double Nydus forced Clem to split. The fact, I'm not sure why he didn't have any units on the right side. He just didn't for quite some time. He had a Viking here, but he never used that to reposition it. So yeah, he just had nothing here on the right side. I don't think Reynor really cleared it by any means. I think his army just happened to be there. And this is also why every single game is different. So this you can't really repeat the exact same concept of this game. Because the reason why he was first out of position was just because he had nothing on the right side. In some other games he will have something on the right side because there's no creep here. It's a nice angle to attack from. This time around it went quite well for Reynor. Clem thought he could transfer everything to the left. Maybe Reynor would be out of position. Maybe got a good fight. Instead it was a bad fight, and then he had nothing on the right, and on the left he was pushed back as well. So he ended up being out of position. The double Nydus one really looked good though. So if you want to play a kill style, I think having something like a Nydus worm, at least one, maybe two, maybe even three, might be a good idea, depending on how rich you are, right? This is, yeah, it's the killing way of playing Zerg, and I like that quite a bit. I think it's a little bit easier to execute against the absolute top Terrans. If you're not playing against a top Terran, the ones that trade like twice as effective, if you let them, if you're trying to play the starving game, unless you're Cyril, then I think this is an easier way to kill an opponent. So if I was trying to beat Clem, I would also try to play like this. The issue is that I die before I even get there. And if I get there, he's also quicker than me, so I can't quite do what Reynor did here most of the time. Maybe with more practice. Either way, this is, I think, the easier approach to be against the top Terrans. Against the other Terrans, I think the other approach is a little bit easier. So it's really opponent dependent. But it's always the little things that win you the games. The couple of good Widowmine hits we've had recently in Stara Zagora, the match between Reynor and Oliveira just straight up won by having good Widowmines positioned. It was on side delta. He had like 5 Widowmines split, a planetary and 2 tanks, and he remade that every single time it got broken, and that actually won him the game. So a couple of huge Widowmine hits can straight up win the game, just like one Nydus that goes up at this level. TVZ is so even when 2 players like this play against each other that these little moves can really change the outcome of the game. And with the way Reynor was playing, he needed those things to happen. He needed every single one of these things in order to win. He needed the first good move against the Widow Mines where Clem was out of position. Then he needed the Lurker Nydus to go up. And then he needed the final to finish the game. If this didn't happen, we would have looked at an entirely different game. If any of those moves didn't happen, I'm pretty sure. In the end, you can never say because it always plays out differently. Maybe Clem would have made a different mistake. But yeah, you gotta fish for mistakes if you wanna kill the Terran. Try to hope for missplits. One thing that Reynor was really good at doing is whenever something happened that was potentially a game-winning move, like the double Nydus, is trying to poke in at the same time. Even if these fights are always terrible. This one, later on, he does it again with this one. Even if these moves are always terrible, attention is also a resource in StarCraft. And you can't look at every single place of the map at the same time. It's just not possible. You can try to do stuff very quickly on multiple different screens, but the reason why he won was because he didn't pay full attention to this here, because he had to micro here. And then in this fight, he also didn't look. He didn't scan further and faster, which I think is fine, but he just straight up didn't look and then panicked and tried to pull the medevacs back, and it all went down the drain. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed another one of my analysis videos. I'll be back with more videos. Let me know what you want to see down below in the comments. Make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like or a dislike, whatever you prefer. And see you guys next time. Bye bye.